solid to liquid. Ice melts. It changes from solid to liquid. An ice cube in a cup on your desk will change into water in about an hour. Chocolate and butter melt too, but they will not melt on your desk. You have to put them in hot water to make them melt. Wax melts a little bit in hot water. It gets soft, but a pebble won't melt at all. Or will it? What causes the butter to melt? Heat energy. If you put butter in a cup, nothing happens right away. If you put the cup in hot water, the butter melts. Heat energy transfers from the hot water to the butter. Heat energy makes the butter melt. Heat energy is causing this butter to melt.
But ice melts without heat energy. Why is that? Actually, heat energy does make ice melt. When ice is in the freezer, it doesn't melt. It stays solid or frozen. When you bring ice out into a room that is warmer than the freezer, the ice melts. That's because heat energy from the room transfers to the ice and causes it to melt. Materials melt at different temperatures. Water melts at 0 degrees Celsius. Water freezes at 0 degrees Celsius too. When water is below 0 degrees Celsius, it is solid. When it is above 0 degrees Celsius, it is liquid. Chocolate melts at about 50 degrees Celsius. Candle wax melts into liquid at around 80 degrees Celsius. And yes, the pebble will melt when it is heated to over 1,000 degrees Celsius. Have you ever seen lava flowing from a volcano? That's melted rock. Metals melt too. Jewelers melt gold and silver to make rings and other beautiful things. Sculptors melt bronze to make statues. Iron and copper are melted to separate them from the ores taken from mines. Sand is melted to make glass. Many things that we think are always solid will melt if enough heat energy is transferred to them. Liquid and gas changes. When something is wet, it is covered with water, or it has soaked up a lot of water. When it rains, everything outside gets wet. When you go swimming, you and your swimsuit get wet. Clothes are wet when they come out of the washer, and a dog is wet after a bath. But things don't stay wet forever. Things get dry, often by themselves. An hour or two after the rain stops, stairs, sidewalks, and plants are dry. After a break from swimming to eat lunch, you and your swimsuit are dry. After a few hours on the clothesline, clothes are dry. A dog is dry and fluffy a short time after its bath. Where does the water go? It evaporates. When water evaporates, it changes from liquid water to water vapor, a gas. The gas drifts away in the air. What causes liquids to evaporate? Heat. When enough heat transfers to a liquid, the liquid changes into a gas. The water vapor leaves the wet object and goes into the air. As the water evaporates, the wet object gets dry. What happens when you put a wet object in a sealed container? It stays wet. If you put a wet towel in a plastic bag, it's still wet when you take it out of the bag. Why? A little bit of the water in the towel evaporates, but it can't escape into the air. The water vapor has no place to go, so the towel stays wet. Have you ever seen water vapor in the air? No, water vapor isn't visible. When water changes into vapor, it changes into individual water particles. Water particles are too small to be seen with your eyes. The water particles move into the air among the nitrogen and oxygen particles. Water vapor becomes part of the air. When water becomes part of the air, it is no longer liquid water. Gas to liquid. What happens to all that water in the air? As long as the air stays warm, the water stays in the air as water vapor. But when air cools, the water particles start to come together. Tiny droplets of liquid water form. When gas particles come together to form liquid, it is called condensation. Condensation is the change from gas to liquid. When water condenses, it becomes visible again. We see the condensed water as clouds, fog, and dew. What else evaporates? Water isn't the only liquid that evaporates. Gasoline for cars is a liquid. It is kept in tightly closed gas tanks. If the gasoline was left in open containers, it would evaporate and disappear into the air. Here's an interesting fact. We breathe oxygen from the air. Oxygen in the air is a gas. But if you put a container of oxygen in a freezer that is negative 183 degrees Celsius, the oxygen becomes liquid. If there was any liquid oxygen on Earth, it would evaporate because Earth is much warmer than negative 183 degrees Celsius. Water vapor condenses indoors too. On a cold morning, you might see condensation on your kitchen window. Or, if you go outside into the cold wearing your glasses, they will get fogged with condensation when you go back inside. What happens to the bathroom mirror after you take a shower? The air in the bathroom is warm and filled with water vapor. When the air touches the cool mirror, the water vapor condenses on the smooth surface. That's why the mirror gets foggy and wet. Condensation on a window. Condensation on a mirror.